Hello and welcome to the NBA Outlet presented by OGGBasketball.com. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron. What's up, Kory?
Nothing much. Been a couple days since we did a podcast. It's Sunday fun day, and I don't think I'd want to start my Sunday off any other way.
All right, here we go. Ready to talk some hoops. Quick reminder just before we get started, check us out on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OGGBasketball.com, and YouTube. But today we're going to talk about our favorite signings, least favorite signings. Kory's got a new segment for us at the end, too, so here we go. Right off the bat, Kory, what's one of your favorite signings of the offseason? And let's not include LeBron or DeMarcus Cousins because they're quite obvious, but your favorite ones.
I'm going to start off with my biased one first. I'll get that out of the way. My favorite signing is Tyreke Evans to the Pacers on a one-year deal. Tyreke Evans had an incredible year last year with the Memphis Grizzlies. Obviously, the Grizzlies were a shitheel and they weren't that good, but Tyreke Evans was really a bright spot for that team. He had one of his best years in his career. He stayed healthy for once, too. The long ball was coming. He's a little bit of everything, can rebound, can pass, and the Pacers got him on a one-year deal. It gives them, a replacement for Lance Stevenson and a better version of Lance Stevenson. Tyreke Evans is kind of what Pacer fans wanted Lance to be at his best. And I think Tyreke Evans has the possibility of really flourishing in either a six-man role or just playing as a platoon starter. I mean, he can play 1 through 3. For me, that was a move that I really liked, especially on a one-year deal. The Pacers will have, a ton of cap space next year, and they can either bring him back or try and go big fish hunting.
Yeah, and I had a feeling you would pick Evans as well. I had him on my list, but I got to back up just in case. But you're right. It's an upgrade over Lance. Great season, 19-5-5, shot 45% from the field, almost 40% from three, which is really good for him. If he can keep that three-point shooting up, that'll be big for the Pacers. And then we saw in the playoffs a little bit when Oladipo got double-teamed a lot. It kind of put pressure on other guys to create. Now they have another creator, another playmaker in Evans, and it's a really nice fit for the Pacers.
Yeah, the playmaking and being able to take pressure off Oladipo is probably why I like this signing so much. Because as you mentioned, last year in the playoffs when Victor Oladipo got really hot in the first couple of games, he struggled in the middle of that series because the Cavaliers just were taking him out. And, there was no one else really on the Pacers who could step up and really, be the ball handler. And Tyreke Evans can really do that.
Yeah, and you could probably argue that, Evans was one of the best non-All-Stars available during this free agency period, and the Pacers locked him up for 1 year. Like you said, gives him some nice cap flexibility for next year, too. Moving on to another signing that I liked, Isaiah Thomas with the Nuggets. 1 year minimum deal, low risk, high reward. If he comes back healthy, obviously coming back from the hip injury that he suffered with Boston. In Cleveland, we never saw him get 100%. Same thing with the Lakers. If he's back to being probably 75 to 80% of what he was in Boston, they have themselves an elite six-man, somebody who can really score and give them some nice pop. And worst case scenario, they waive him because he's only on a minimum deal.
Yeah, this is one of my signings too, actually, that had I think this was a really good move for the Denver Nuggets. They had a really good free agency. I feel like they just solidified this core by bringing back Barton, moving Fareed recently, and bringing Isaiah Thomas. Thomas has played under Mike Malone in Sacramento, so there's a relationship there. Isaiah Thomas, when he is healthy, just a year ago, was top 5 in MVP voting. Led that Celtics team in a deep playoff run, played a game the day after his sister died. He had an incredible season in Boston, played through a hip injury in the playoffs, which, seriously affected him last year. We never really saw him get back to true form. And now the Nuggets have a six-man, a guy who's hungry, has a chip on his shoulder, he's always had a chip on his shoulder. But, I think it's more so now, especially after the turbulent year he had last year. This is a chance for him to really, reinvent himself. He's on a team that offensively is going to be really fun, I think, talented. He's got some guys he can dish it off to, a lot of scoring pop around him. How he is hidden on defense and how that team as a whole plays defense is going to be something you want to keep an eye on. But I think Isaiah Thomas was a really low-risk, high-reward for the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, it's going to be a contract year for him. Like he was hoping to get paid this summer. He didn't, obviously, coming off the injury. Now, next year, he's going to look to get some really major bank, and he's going to need to prove it. Also, on the Denver side, when Jokic went out, they had some offensive problems once in a while. So having a guy like IT there to kind of keep up for that, who can score on his own, do a lot of things. He's also pretty clutch, too, when he's healthy. So that's another nice add. What's another signing you like, Kory?
Now, I know you may I don't know if you'll agree with me on this one. I like Fred VanVleet being re-signed by the Raptors. This is a smaller move. I know this is a role player, but the big thing that the Raptors did last season was they had this bench unit that finally took pressure off the starters. We saw Kyle Lowry be able to play less minutes. He was one of the guys in recent memory who always played, 37 to 38 minutes a game, and he was never really healthy in the playoffs. Fred VanVleet was a great backup guy for him. And last year we saw him really, he finished, I think, third place in Sixth Man of the Year voting, and he was a big piece for them. And obviously the Raptors had some cap situations, so bringing him back was at the beginning of free agency kind of a question mark. And I think bringing him back is great for the Raptors, especially after getting Kawhi, and now they're trying to retool quickly. Obviously, they're not rebuilding, obviously, but they switched out DeRozan for Kawhi. They bring in Danny Green, and I think Fred VanVleet is going to have a bigger role next year. And I think he's a big part of any success the Raptors are going to have.
Yeah, and they really missed him during the postseason when he was banged up and he was out. That was a big reason why they struggled in some of the playoffs, but obviously they also have their other issues. I thought VanVleet was a solid signing. I didn't include any re-signings, but I think that was a good one because the Raptors looked like they would lose him. A team like maybe Orlando or Phoenix was going to offer him money, and they paid VanVleet pretty well. I think 2 years, $18 million. Not a bad deal. I think it's solid for the Raptors, and it kind of keeps that bench unit together, and it worked out perfectly because they ended up getting Kawhi. If they thought maybe they wouldn't compete this year and they let him go and then they traded for Kawhi, they might be upset, but they kept him and now they have a nice piece on their bench. Who can fill in and start too, because Lowry's getting up there in age in case he's banged up at any point in the season.
Exactly, yeah.
So I guess I'll show a little bias on one of my picks too. I got Brook Lopez signing with the Bucks, 1 year, $3.4 million. Think this is a really nice fit on multiple levels. It gives Giannis a nice floor spacer at the big position, somebody who can go score down low, get you some buckets when Giannis is out of the game. We know Budenholzer uses bigs to space the floor a lot, especially at that 5 position. So Brook fits there, and they got him at a really cheap price. At $3.4 million, you can't really beat that.
No, I think we talked about this when he was first signed. I think it's a really good move for the Bucks. It gives them a guy who offensively can stretch the floor. I think the big issue we've both had with Milwaukee is the fact they don't have a lot of shooters, a lot of space. And you're a big, space the floor kind of guy. Brook Lopez can now hit the three, pretty much consistently. He can play 20 minutes a game. I think this kind of pushes Henson out of the picture, and you can play more Brook Lopez, and then for me would be Thon Maker. A little bit of defense and offense between the two of them. Both can shoot the ball. Brook Lopez in the pick and roll with Antetokounmpo should be really fun. I think Brook Lopez just gives them the offensive punch at center that they really haven't had the last couple of years.
Yeah, and
I mean Greg Monroe, he's kind of offensive, but Greg Monroe is so terrible on defense that you couldn't play him. At least Brook Lopez does give you some rim protection too.
Yeah, he's a slight rim protector, and with the defensive group they have, having a Giannis out there, a Middleton, a Tony Snell, maybe a Malcolm Brogdon or a Bledsoe, there's some nice speed and athleticism out there that kind of make up for some of Brook's lack of foot speed. So I think it will be a good fit, and like you said, in a smaller role, I don't think he'll be playing big minutes, but he probably should start and give them some nice pop. What's another signing you got, Kory?
Another signing I got is Julius Randle. Julius Randle was the out of left field signing, I think, in a lot of ways. What was the number again? 2 years, $18 million. Right?
Yep, a player option on year 2.
Right. So $9 million a year. And he can bet on himself and opt out and probably get more money. So I think he's gonna have a huge year. We all were thinking the Pelicans were gonna re-sign Cousins, and we were looking at how they were gonna make that work. And then Randle kind of came out of left field with this signing, and I love it. It's a young piece. It's a guy who obviously. When he started getting minutes at the small ball 5 last year for the Lakers, his numbers really picked up. He is a double-double guy. He actually can get triple-double because he does have a decent amount of playmaking ability. The one thing you want Julius Randle to expand on is the three-point shooting. You want to see him kind of, develop more of a jump shot. But, he can run the floor himself. He can bring the ball up. He plays solid defense. Obviously he's still young, so he's got to work on some positioning things. But overall, it was a nice young player to add next to Anthony Davis and Jrue Holiday. And who knows, if Randle takes his game to another level, he may actually be a better complementary player to Anthony Davis than a DeMarcus Cousins.
Yeah, it was a really nice signing. I think a lot of people were impressed with this one, getting him for 2 years, 18 million. When you see Jabari Parker signed for like 2 years and 40 million, you're like, all right, well, getting Randall for that price is really good. And you mentioned last year, big year, 16 points a game, 8 rebounds a game, only in 26 minutes. So obviously those numbers are probably going to jump because he's going to see more minutes. He's a nice fit next to AD. He's a nice fit next to Mirotic. So when that he brings some toughness, some bully ball down low. And like you said, there's some work that he can still do in his game. I think he's only like 23 or 24 years old. So it's not like he still can't improve. And there is some defensive versatility there. Obviously, like you said, he needs to work on some of the fundamentals, but there is potential to be a really good defender as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is one signing that we may look back on and be like, it was definitely a steal. Because also before he got signed with the Pelicans, there was like no rumors about him. Like no team was really attached to him. It was kind of like a dead market, and then the Pelicans swooped in.
Yeah, they got a good value. And I think maybe Dallas was one team mentioned a lot, but then they went and signed DeAndre. So that kind of took him out of his own market. Another signing for me, I also had Tyreek Evans. I had Julius Randle. I like the signing. Just I'm going to go, I guess, with a little bias for myself. The net signing of the Portland players, signing Ed Davis and Shabazz Napier, both guys on good deals. Ed Davis 1 year, 4.4 million. Shabazz a 2 year deal, which is probably close to the minimum, and a team option on year 2. They both fit a need. Ed Davis brings toughness, rebounding, a backup center, great locker room guy, and Shabazz just is a nice off-ball fit, can shoot the 3 ball, and perfect in that net system.
Yeah, both those guys, they're going to be nice pieces. They both play hard. Shabazz Napier showed a lot of progress last year for sure. He's the third guard on that depth chart, really. They even played him as, alongside Lillard and McCollum at times. He can do a little bit of everything. And then Ed Davis, had some rebounding the Nets were desperately lacking.
Yeah, so and both at a good price, and they gave the team flexibility for cap space for the following year. And it kind of signals the Nets might be looking to kind of fill out that team. They added to some depth and looking to compete a little bit more than maybe the last 2 seasons. What other signings you got, Kory?
Is Paul George too easy to do?
You could do it if you like. I mean, I thought that was pretty easy because I think it was obvious, but I mean, I thought it was a great signing, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that why I like this signing, I'm going to do this signing because I think this signing was huge, just because of everything. When he first got traded there, everyone just immediately said it was a 1 year rental, and then he was going to go to the Lakers. And obviously last season wasn't even that good of a season for the Thunder. They kind of had some odd pieces and everything else. And then you bring him back, and not just, on a 1 year deal, you bring him back on a 4 year deal, and he's there long term now. You don't have to worry about him, going anywheres. They actually set it up so he's likely to get another 3 years and have a super max, like a 7 year deal, or I can't remember how it's going to work out. But he's going to end up making a ton more money with OKC. So he's probably going to stay the rest of his career, it feels like. I just think this move for the Thunder, it solidifies this Westbrook and Paul George duo. It also, as we know, Melo was traded, so it makes this re-signing, I think, that much better. Because I think Melo just kind of disrupted a lot of the offense. It's not Melo's fault. I mean, it is Melo's fault, but that's just how it is. And I think this Paul George signing, we're going to look back, and I think Russell Westbrook and Paul George will be able to play off each other more. They won't have to worry about trying to get Melo involved and get Melo touches. I think next year we're actually going to see a lot more fluid offense from this Thunder team. And then the defense is just going to be absurd.
Yeah, and like you said, it kind of pretty much saved OKC. Like if he didn't re-sign, they would have been in a lot of trouble. Like they could have. There was rumors about them potentially going to rebuild and trying to move Westbrook if they lost Paul George, because their cap situation is so bad. They didn't really have many options. So they ended up, out of this, almost a best case scenario in a way, for OKC this offseason. Get rid of Melo, no offense to him. He still probably has something in the tank. It's just about the fit and how he's going to kind of adapt to his new role wherever he lands, which is probably Houston. But now Paul George and Westbrook are going to have a better relationship. I think Adams will get more involved, and he's proven a lot over the last few years, and he seems to get better every season. So I agree. I think the Paul George signing was big for OKC now and for the future. I think I have one more. Jonas Jerebko with the Warriors. I thought this was a steal. Obviously, they didn't really have to do much. He was waived, and then he kind of just landed in their lap. But getting a player like that, 1 year, 2.2 mil, bench depth, solid player, bring some hustle, shot over 40% from three last year. Just give the Warriors some more talent.
Yeah, it was one of those like, damn, you guys, like,
yeah,
give the league a break. Yeah, this was a good signing. Another guy who just fell into their lap, kind of like Amari Caspi did last year. It's definitely a good signing. If anything happens to anyone in that front court, they have another guy another guy to step up. So it's definitely a solid move, and it just shows that, when you're as good as the Warriors, you just get handed players, it feels like. When players like this become open, immediately they get tied to the Warriors. And who's going to turn down a shot to win a title? Not that many people, especially when they're already going to make, the bare minimum to begin with.
Yeah, and it's not like DeMarcus Cousins called them and asked to play on their team or anything. It's
right.
just so crazy to be a Warriors fan and Warriors player or whatever. But let's turn around the spectrum and look at some of the worst signings. What are some signings that stuck out to you that you were like, eh?
All right, so the first one, I think it's kind of easy. It's right on your list. The Jabari Parker signing by the Bulls is the first one. 2 years, $20 million. Guy coming off 2 ACL injuries to the same knee. Obviously, the Bucks didn't want it. It was actually funny because the Jabari was a restricted free agent, and the Bucks put out like a press release or whatever that they mutually decided to get rid of the restricted free agency so he can become like an unrestricted free agent.
Which is crazy, to be honest, because they could have, like, they had all the leverage in the situation. Like, the Bulls, they probably wouldn't have matched a deal regardless anyways, but like they could have at least held some leverage and been like, oh, Jabari, sign the qualifying offer and then we'll keep him at a really cheap price for the year. Just the fact that they let him go with ease kind of sends a message too, like, all right, we really didn't want this dude in our team.
Yeah, precisely. That was my thought exactly. So I mean, good for him, I guess, because he obviously wants to get paid, and who knows what happens. At least now, even if he gets hurt, God forbid, he does have the money solidified right now. But I don't know. It's a lot of money for a guy that has just so many question marks. He's not a good defender. Offensively, we've seen glimpses, but the more injuries you get, especially to the lower half of your body, it doesn't generally bode well for a good long NBA career. So for me, it's just a lot of money for a guy who's got a lot of question marks. I don't necessarily dislike the fit, but I dislike the money that's attached with him.
I dislike the fit because I think you have Lauri Markkanen, Wendell Carter. They're going to be your power forward and your center. That's your big. Like, you're going to play him at small forward. I looked it up on B-Ball Reference. Jabari's played 78% of his, basketball minutes at power forward. So all the success he's most likely had has been at power forward. And then he also had some comments about his defense at the Bulls press conference that weren't too encouraging. So now you have, Zach LaVine, Jabari Parker, two guys who can't really defend well, and you're paying him $20 million. The only savior in this thing is that they have a team option for the second year. If they didn't have that team option, they'd be in some major trouble. Another thing that kind of scares me about Jabari, and I don't wish ill will on him or anything, I hope he's 100% healthy for the rest of his career, but the way he jumps, he's really explosive when he jumps. He explodes off the ground, and it seems like that type of jumping can result into more injuries, and already having 2 torn ACLs just doesn't seem like it's going to be a good fit.
Yeah, that's another issue. You're right. The way he kind of throws his body.
Yeah.
I did love his comments about Derrick Rose, though. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was nice. I mean, defending Rose, I think a lot of people throw shade at him, and it's nice to see the young players that really respect Rose and what he did, especially Jabari being from Chicago. I'm sure that had something to do with it, and maybe Jabari will bounce back, but I believe at the press conference he said something about the NBA is all about offense. No one really talks about defense.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah, your squad needs to play defense if you're going to want to win. I think the Bulls are going to be a team going to next offseason where people are going to be really hot and really cold. I've seen people have them as possibly in the 8th seed, and I've had people have them as a bottom 2 or 3 team in the East. So I don't know what's really going to happen with the Bulls. We'll have to look a little bit more into that later on. But I'm going to go. I had Jabari on my list, obviously. Nick Stauskas with the Blazers, a 1 year, $1.6 million minimum deal, which obviously, Nick, why are you mad about a minimum deal? But why did they sign him so fast? He was literally one of the first signings of free agency. He's coming off a really rough season. He's never shot over 40% from the field in his career. So I don't know what's the thinking for the Blazers, especially after they lost some solid bench guys of their own.
I don't know. I'm not going to try and say his name. We know how that goes. But, I mean, he can shoot, but like you said, even defensively,
inconsistent shooting too. It's one game he'll drop 5 or 6 threes, and then the next 3 games he'll hit 1 or 2 maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. This was an odd sign, like you said. It was also so quick, which I have another quick sign we'll talk about. But definitely a strange move for the Blazers. A move, especially when you're the 3 seed or coming off a 3 seed year. This move doesn't, trend up. You lost Ed Davis and Napier, and you bring in Hot Sauce. this is a move that to me moves the arrow down, not going up.
And you brought in Seth Curry too, which is somewhat similar to an extent, except Seth is a better version of Stauskas. Like, there's nothing on no offense to Stauskas, like he just needs work in his game. He hasn't really gotten a ton of minutes, but he did have a few opportunities in Brooklyn, and he really just didn't show up. Like, he had a couple good games, I would say, but at most of the games he just struggled offensively, and defensively he's nothing special. So, but what's your next signing, Kory?
Doug McDermott. I did not like this signing. I actually listened to the Low Post the other day at work, and Nick Friedel, I think, was on, the Bulls guy, and he said he brought up Doug McDermott signing and started laughing. He was like, "I don't know how he got $7 million," and I feel the same way. I don't know how he got that much money, and also I don't know how he was the first guy that the Pacers signed this offseason. You know, you look at who the Pacers signed, and Kyle O'Quinn, Tyreek Evans, and Doug McDermott, and you would think Tyreek Evans would be, you know, the first guy signed and maybe Kyle O'Quinn second, but no, it was Doug McDermott first for, you know, $7 million over 3 years. I don't know. I mean, the signing for spacing wise is good. You know, he gives them more shooting, but I just don't see any way how he's going to be able to contribute enough to a team and to a run, you know, where the $7 million to me looks worth it, because I don't see him playing much more than, you know, 15 to 20 minutes a game to begin with.
Yeah, $7 million a year is kind of, I think, a little bit overpriced for him. Obviously, shooting's at a premium, so maybe the Pacers saw something in his game they really liked, but also a surprise. You know, it was weird. I guess maybe just the shooters got locked up pretty fast, because we did see Joe Harris sign the same night back with the Nets on a lesser deal. Then we also saw Marco Bellinelli sign pretty quick with the Spurs as well. So that's the only thing I can think of, but I agree. I'm not a huge fan of signing, but I could see it having some benefit for the Pacers, and they do have a lot of cap flexibility moving forward, but still, you don't want to lock up a guy like that. He still has a lot to prove in this league because he's never really been a consistent role player.
Yeah, and the Pacers love white guy shooters. They seem to always have one on the team. You know, we had Dunleavy for a while. We had Chase Budinger for 2 years. We like having white guys, at least one or two white guys who can just shoot and do nothing else.
Moving on to my next signing, Elfrid Payton, 1 year, $2.7 million with the Pelicans. You know, it's not a terrible signing if Payton was going to be the backup, but from what I've read, this kind of hurt their case to get Rondo. And obviously, Payton has no jumper. He's not a great defender. I know people talk about him playing good defense, but it's really inconsistent. And not to mention, the Suns let him walk, and the Suns need a point guard. So if, you know, Phoenix doesn't want him and you're going to try to bring him to New Orleans and be your starter, I don't think that's really going to work out.
Yeah, this was an interesting signing, especially after, you know, how at least it felt that the team loved Rondo, right?
Yeah,
like
the coaching, AD, everybody seemed to love Rondo, and he was great. That was the best I've seen Rondo play in a while.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this was surprising to me. And like you said, it's a guy who can't shoot well. I mean, luckily he got a haircut, so we don't have to worry about his hair blinding him, his shot, or the ball hitting his hair trying to take a jump shot. But the Jimmy is broke. Maybe the Jimmy is being fixed as we talk now.
Maybe.
The defense thing, like, yeah, he is inconsistent, and when you're playing with the Magic and the Suns, you know, I don't know how often guys come with 110% energy, you know, and they play every possession, because when you're gauging the value of players who play on bad teams, it's tough, because, like, you know, Michael Carter-Williams had a really good rookie season on a really bad Sixers team, and now we know what he is. You know, he's eighth, ninth man off the bench, and that's even pushing it. So, I mean, this is Elfrid Payton's last chance, though. We can say that. You know, if he comes out of the gate stumbling and he doesn't have a good year with the Pelicans, I don't think we'll see him in the NBA much longer, or at least definitely not as a starter. This is one of his last chances to kind of prove himself. And who knows, you know, playing alongside, you know, Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday, having some shooters nearby. He has had, you know, several triple doubles over the past couple seasons. Maybe he can elevate his game slightly and be, you know, a drive and dish, pick and roll type of point guard for the Pelicans team. But this is the best team he's ever been on. So I guess maybe that can help push him in the right direction.
Yeah, I think another thing with the signing, though, too, is it was kind of quick. Like, it wasn't like it was later in free agency. It happened in the first few days. And like I said, they didn't have a ton of money. Yeah, and they didn't have a ton of money to offer in the first place. And this, I'm pretty sure, used some of their taxpayer MLE. So it's not like they didn't have other options. They kind of rushed into Elfrid Payton. And then if you decide to start Randall, I don't know what they're going to do. I would assume they're probably starting Randall because AD made the call to get him on the team and whatnot. Yeah, you're going to have some real shooting issues because you're going to have Peyton, you're going to have Randall, can't really shoot. AD's not a great three-point shooter. He can shoot the three, but they prefer to keep him more inside. So now your spacing's all kind of messed up. It's not like Rondo was an amazing shooter, but he did know how to play basketball, high basketball IQ, cutting, making himself useful even when he couldn't shoot. But
it's again, it's just a move that had a lot of question marks, and like you said, it was done so quick that it makes you just question. Because Julius Randle probably wasn't even on the radar yet when they signed him.
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, we don't know what happened in New Orleans. Their offseason could have got all types of screwed up if they thought they were going to get Cousins back and then they didn't, and everything just kind of fell apart from there. We'll never really know. But who else you got on bad signings, Kory?
My next bad signing, I don't know. It's weird because it's not really a bad signing, but the implications could be a bad signing. Dwight Howard to the Wizards.
Yeah, I thought about putting this one on my list.
Like it's funny because in a way it's a good signing because Gortat was so bad. So by the principles of having a basketball team on the court, it's a good sign. But at the same time, to me, it just every team he's been dealt from, they have cheered in joy when he's gone.
The locker room stuff with him it's been crazy to hear. Like I remember after he got traded to the Nets, obviously they bought him out like a week later, that the Nets players would not enjoy playing with him, that he just brings bad vibes to the locker room. Same thing Atlanta, same thing in Orlando, same thing in LA. Like it's just like everywhere Dwight goes, and that locker room already had its issues moving into the season. Obviously moving Gortat kind of helped that, but instead you bring in Dwight, who is a big question mark himself. And obviously the on-court play, he still has value, but still it's not like he's the most consistent player. And there's been always some thought about, does he always put in the effort?
Yeah, exactly. Does he put in the effort? I don't know. This is, to me, it's just a bad, like you said, everything you just mentioned is why, to me, it's a bad signing, especially in a locker room like the Wizards, which has already been turbulent. I mean, This was a team last year when John Wall got hurt. We can call it what it is, but to me, they turned on John Wall when he got hurt. They started talking about how they were playing team basketball. Gortat was throwing shade and everything else. Like this, and Bradley Beal and John Wall have had their issues in the past. Like this isn't a unified locker room, and you're bringing in a guy who has, if anything, hurt every locker room he's been to since he left Orlando. And even the end of Orlando, he was, telling people to fire Van Gundy, then going up to Van Gundy and, hugging him like 5 minutes after that or whatever the case was, that weird interview.
He demanded a trade to Brooklyn, and then later in the season, he signed an extension with Orlando. So it was just like, okay, dude, like make up your mind. Maybe Dwight will learn that, this is his last opportunity. This is one of his last stops to be a starter, because if he doesn't prove it here, then I think he's probably going to be a backup, and teams are going to be kind of scared to take a flyer on him just because of all the locker room stuff.
I mean, I think he has the talent. I mean, he's still a double machine. I mean,
he's still a big dude. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like you said, though, you're as much as you like the basketball player, if the person is an issue, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. And I think him and John Wall could be fun. But again, if he becomes a locker room issue and guys don't like him, this could be really bad for a Wizards team that's really trying to make a move in the East when it's getting worse.
Yeah, it's like a signing that really makes a lot of sense in 2K because you don't have to worry about relationships as much. Yeah. Obviously, they have some chemistry thing in there.
He's got to turn off player morale, too.
Yeah, exactly, and you'll be in pretty good shape. But all right, moving on to my next signing, Tony Parker, 2 years, $10 million with the Hornets. Honestly, not a huge fan of this one. Tony's 36 years old, shot 27% from three last year. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about him being kind of washed up. I get the fit with James Borrego as a new coach. He has an experience with Tony Parker, Nicholas Batum, French teammate, but still 2 years, $10 million. I feel like they probably could have spent the money elsewhere and probably got a little bit younger. I think, athleticism and speed with this team, and spacing is a need too.
Yeah. Especially because we just don't know what the Hornets want to do. They get rid of Dwight Howard. They just have this weird assortment of players, the huge Nicholas Batum contract, which is really, I think, why they don't want to fully tank, because you just can't move that guy.
Yeah, without moving Kemba or a high pick, and they already, are looking like they're trying to keep Kemba. Kemba said he wants to be a Hornet his whole life, and they didn't trade the pick from this year, so they're in between land.
Right, and Kemba's a huge fan favorite, and he's good. I mean, if you don't have to trade Kemba Walker, I wouldn't trade him. I love Kemba. I love his game, and he's gotten better, as he's gotten older. The Tony Parker signing is just weird because it's like you said, it's just strange. He's not like doesn't really shoot the ball well. He can't really stay healthy. It feels like he can be a good vet. And that's the one good thing is this is a guy who's been around the league for a while, but
But Kenny, he kind of hurt that relationship with Kawhi. You know what I mean? Like that's another thing too. Is like that was kind of a shady remark. Like I get it, you had no ill will, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense to say. And if like for those listening who don't recall, they asked Tony Parker about his quad injury he suffered a year before, and him not taking as much time to recover, and then Kawhi having a lesser injury, and Tony Parker was like, "Yeah, my injury was way worse." Like, why would you say that? First off, you're not a doctor. You don't know his injury. It just seems like not something very smart to say at the moment, especially when the relationship's probably shaky because you're part of that organization.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was a bad comment. I mean, I've never really liked Tony Parker, if I'm being honest. I mean,
yeah, he cheated on Eva Longoria.
Yeah, I was about to say that. He's a cheater. What they say: once a cheater, always a cheater.
She's a really good-looking woman. Like, I don't know what Tony Parker's bagging because he doesn't seem like a great-looking guy himself.
If you think about it, if you take him cheating on her, who's good-looking, and then the comment about his quad injury being, worse than Kawhi's, this is a really egotistic guy in a way.
Yeah.
So he's kind of a douche. Tony Parker's listening right now. And he's fuming.
He's gonna sue us like he sued.
He's making his first burner account right now.
He sued somebody. I want to say it was either Drake or whoever was at the club because there was an incident with Chris Brown and Drake at a club, and somebody threw bottles, and then the glass got in Tony Parker's eye, and then he sued. I want to say it might have been Jay-Z's club or someone's.
I can honestly say though, if a piece of glass got in my eye, I'd probably sue.
Yeah, no, I agree. You'd probably sue, especially if you're a basketball player and that's implementing your career.
Yeah, so I think back to the signing of Tony Parker. I like the little off topic rampo. I think it's an okay signing as the player on the court and as a backup, but then everything between that I think is just interesting and not good. Like, why are you signing Tony Parker? For me, is the biggest question. And then two, you got rid of one cancer in Dwight Howard. We don't really know if Tony Parker is a cancer or not, but the latest signs have pointed to him not being, maybe the greatest of teammates.
Yeah, and I just don't like the money amount either. Like, why are you paying Tony Parker $5 million a season? Like, I don't think on this market he's really would have gotten that anywhere. Like, there's a reason the Spurs didn't re-sign him is because they didn't want to pay him that much money. And if the Spurs are probably some of the best talent evaluators in the league and they didn't want to pay him, that should say something.
I will say this, though. This is the best backup point guard the Hornets have had probably in, a decade almost.
Probably since Jeremy Lin.
I've had Jeremy Lin for a while, yeah, because Raymond Sessions never stayed healthy. I mean, MCW, goodbye.
Yeah, no, this should.
Ryan Roberts never could shoot.
It'll solidify that area, but there was probably other options where they probably could have got cheaper or younger, which I thought would have made more sense. But it's not like the end of the world. But obviously, the Hornets aren't going to be competing for a championship anytime soon. Sorry, Dylan. Sorry, Evan. But what's your next signing, Kory? My
next bad signing. It's kind of it's a toss up for me between Zach LaVine, because I don't like the money of that, and then I also I don't know if I think that's too hot takey. I'm just gonna say Zach LaVine. I think the other one's too hot.
No, you gotta tell us now.
No, I'll save it. I still got one more to go, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I one or two more. Either way. Zach LaVine. So now I got two Chicago Bulls on my list. 4 years, $80 million. He's just. I mean, you had to re-sign him. Like I understand you had to re-sign him, and obviously the Kings offer sheet is what really pushed this to the point of $80 million. But man, 40 million locked up between Jabari Parker and Zach LaVine, who both don't play defense, both have had knee injuries. It's just the recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think, like I mentioned before, they had to resign it to an extent, and then also they kind of hurt themselves not offering him a deal. But then thinking about it a little bit further, like I actually might have just declined to not match the offer sheet because I would have gone into next offseason with so much cap space, like a ridiculous amount of cap space. I want to say they're already going to have like 50 or 60. They could have had close to like 70 or 80. And they would have some nice young pieces with Wendell Carter or Laurie Marketing. And they could have went and signed somebody else in the market to, a young young up and coming player, but instead they kind of locked a lot of money up with Levine, 20 mil for 20 mil per year for 4 years, and then obviously Jabari for 20 mil this year and possibly next year. It's just really, it's an ugly way to handle your books when we thought the Bulls were kind of on the right path, and it's kind of like they're getting back to that bad path again.
Yeah, I mean, did we really trade away? Did you really trade away Jimmy Butler to have this assortment of players? I don't know. I mean, obviously, when you're rebuilding, this is what you got to do, I suppose.
I think they got a little impatient, to be honest. I think, they were a little bit more patient. They would have been like, all right, it's not that big a deal. We lost it. We're going to catch a lot of heat. But they felt like, all right, we need to kind of make this team get better sooner than later. But guys, you've only been in a rebuild for like a year or two. Like, relax.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, even if you let Zach LaVine walk, you probably still somewhat win the Jimmy Butler trade because Markkanen was a hit.
Yeah, he looks like a future All-Star.
Yeah, and Chris Dunn was a hit. I mean, his game took leaps and bounds from his first year in Minnesota to his first year in Chicago. So, I mean, it wouldn't be a giant loss if you let Zach LaVine walk. And now, I don't know. I think this is just something that could lead to a lot of issues down the road if these guys can't stay healthy.
Yeah, and obviously the ACL thing. And like I said, like
no
if you got
defense.
him and you got him at a lesser deal, it would have made a lot more sense. And there's also been some question marks about what else he can do other than score. His playmaking, and like you said, his defense, his rebounding. It's like, what else do you bring to the table?
And his shooting isn't that great. It's really just his athletic ability that is so eye-gauging about Zach LaVine.
Yeah, he started to improve, I would say, his last season as a Timberwolf as a pull-up three shooter, which I think is big, but still you need to bring more to the table if you're a 20 mil per year type of guy, especially with the fit that they already have over there. But on to my next signing, it's kind of a combo. I'm just going to put them both into one, and that's Lance Stevenson and Michael Beasley with the Lakers. Lance signed 1 year 4.5, Beasley 1 year 3.5. Honestly, I think if you sign one of these guys, it would have been okay. But I think it's just like too much craziness for the locker room. Not saying Lance or Michael Beasley are bad people, but there's just a lot of like energy around them, a lot of press, especially in LA. And I think they could have found better fits, especially at the price. It's not like these guys are getting paid the minimum, which they probably could have paid them. And I think the Lakers still need a big. And both these guys are probably better with the ball in their hands. Now you look at the roster, and obviously LeBron has mentioned, he wants to play off ball a little bit, but you still have guys like Lonzo. You still have guys like Rondo. You have Brandon Ingram, who you want to make sure keeps getting better, and he's going to need the ball a little bit. So having Beasley and Lance and signing them for more than the minimum was kind of just a weird move for the Lakers.
So I can't agree with you on the Lance signing.
4.5 for Lance. 4.5 for Lance.
I mean, he was going to make 4.3 with the Pacers. I think Lance
and they let him go. And they let him go. And that's where he's played the best.
They let him go because they were going to get Tyreek Evans. I mean, that's what that comes down to. But
they got and McBuckets.
Right. And
yeah.
I would say Lance at 4.5 is a lot better than McDermott at 7.3, no?
No, I think I'd rather have a floor spacer, especially with LeBron. Like, what is Lance going to do? Like, Lance needs the ball in his hands, and you already have Rondo, you have Lonzo, you have LeBron, and you have Ingram.
Lance does play both ways, though. Lance is a good defender. He doesn't take possessions off defensively either. He plays hard on both ends.
He plays with a lot of energy, but statistically, his defensive numbers were pretty bad last year. Like, he plays hard, but it's not always about being in the right position and everything. He's just more of like one of those guys where he plays with a lot of energy and effort, where his defense I don't think is as good as advertised. He's an annoying guy, but I don't think he's probably I wouldn't have signed him that fast.
It may have been fast, I suppose. I don't know. I agree that the combination of both these guys is bad because, actually, you could honestly pair Rondo, Stevenson, and Beasley all together as having all three of them signed as a bad signing.
Spacing wise, there's just not. I mean, Beasley's probably the best shooter out of the three. Rondo has been a hit or miss 3-point shooter. He's gotten a little bit better later in his career. And Lance is an inconsistent 3-point shooter. I feel like I've watched him. He's hoisted up like 4 or 5 threes, missed them all, and then other games he'll knock down like 2 or 3 straight.
Yeah, the thing about Lance is I think I've told this stat before, when Lance makes his first shot of a game, in those games he shoots like 48% or higher. And when he misses his first shot, he shoots, I think, under 36% for the game. So he's just a rhythm guy. If he hits this first shot, he generally catches rhythm or, whatever the case is. Like if he's feeling it, he's feeling it.
Who are you giving minutes to? And Lance has to, you were looking at you playing him at the 1 or the 2 most likely. You have Lonzo, you have Lance. You have Lonzo, you have Rondo. And then to the 2, you got Josh Hart, who's Summer League MVP, looking really good. And then you re-sign KCP for a large amount. So where are you going to find minutes for Lance too is the question.
I mean that's a fair point too. I mean the only good thing is I guess because Lonzo Ball might be out for the start of the season. I'm guessing, right? There's no way.
They said he'll be back by training camp, but it's hit or miss with like what's gonna happen. We don't really know with the big
I
ball
mean, if
camp.
I was them, I wouldn't rush it. I don't know why you'd rush it back. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where Lance does fit in. But LeBron wanted playmakers, right?
They
He's
gave
got
him a
playmakers.
surplus. It's like you want playmakers, and they just like poured them on his head.
Well, and also, from what I read and saw, LeBron asked for Stevenson.
Which
LeBron,
I think it makes more sense if you get one of the guys, but I still I'm not a huge fan of the money amount. Like for some reason, I just think that you could have at this market, you probably could have got Lance for a little bit less.
I don't know. You probably could have got him for a little bit less.
Because a lot of teams I think are scared to sign him because I remember reading stuff that as soon as the Hornets signed him, they were calling the Pacers to take him back like a month later because really he's only played good basketball in Indiana.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, he definitely has only. I mean, the stats show it. Actually, the like 9-game stretch he had with the Pelicans was good, and then I think he like tore his hamstring or whatever. But yeah, he hasn't played good basketball outside of Indiana. It's true. And even on the road when he was with the Pacers, playing on the road away from the Banker Life Fieldhouse, he wasn't that good. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. The Beasley signing for me, that one I think is a lot worse, just because. This was a guy who, when he was with Miami, I thought was too dumb to know plays. And you know what I'm saying? Like I recall that being an issue of why he could score when he was with Miami, but the issue was he couldn't learn sets, and you can't play with Rondo and LeBron if you don't know sets. All those guys do is run plays and sets. But yeah, he can score. We saw that last year with the Knicks. He had some really good games for them.
He can get hot, yeah.
Yeah, but I think. As Jay Christensen has said, the Lakers just want to be Suicide Squad.
Yeah. I mean, I think you look at this and you're like 8 million, you have 8 million between these two guys that you probably could have went out and signed another solid player on a 1-year deal, especially because I think there's other needs, especially at that big position too on the roster.
Yeah. Yeah, you surely could have.
I think space.
There's no center. Who's the center on this team?
JaVale McGee.
That's their starting center, though. That's
their center as of right now. I mean, they drafted Mo Wagner, who had a pretty solid summer league, but I don't think he's an NBA starter. I don't know if he'll even get to that point in his career. So, I mean, the Lakers are still probably going to make more moves. I guess the one thing someone could say to make these a more positive signing is that they're very movable contracts. It kind of gives them some trade fillers where it's like 4.5, 3.5, nothing too crazy. So that could be another option down the road. But it is a lot of craziness in one locker room. Hopefully it works out for the Lakers' sake, but there's definitely some question marks going there. It's like you expecting LeBron to be superhuman on the court and then superhuman off the court and kind of managing all these personalities.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted to be they wanted to bring back the Lake Show so bad, Showtime, and they're here.
Plenty of attention. I mean, they're going to be getting more hype than anybody. You thought LeBron was on SportsCenter a lot. Wait till this season.
I can't wait for LeBron to get super pissed off at Lance for making a bonehead pass.
Yeah. I mean, I think like in some ways, if I want to play devil's advocate to my own opinion, the one thing I would say is like Lance brings some annoyance. So if you're playing Golden State or Houston, like you send Lance after Steph or Clay or Chris Paul and James Harden just to really annoy the shit out of him. LeBron's dealt with it himself, so he's like, all right, I'm going to put this on somebody else and not my own for once.
Yeah, that's the one good thing. Everyone, especially like this bench unit, Rondo, Beasley, Stevens, they all have chips on their shoulders. Like these are all chippy guys.
Yeah. But what's your last signing, Kory? Or you got more than one?
Well, I'll do my hot takey one that I was gonna do before, and I don't know why I dislike this signing so much, but I do not like Derek Favors back to the Utah Jazz for 2 years, $36 million. I don't like it. He's good. He's solid. He was huge for them when Rudy Gobert went down, but I hate that much money for a guy who really cannot play next to Gobert in the playoffs on the floor. They get beat up when those two guys are on the floor at the same time in the playoffs. I don't know. It was he gonna come off the bench? He's their starting power forward. I don't know. And especially with the free agents we talked about coming out next year and whatever. I think the Jazz would have been better off not putting this much money into Derek Favors. I guess it's only a 2-year deal, but I don't know. I just wasn't a huge fan of how much money Derek Favors got.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like an overpay. I'll say the one thing for the Jazz, I believe the second year is not guaranteed. So they could go out and be like, all right, well, you didn't play up to 18 mil this year. We're going to get rid of you. Or he's a really good piece in a trade package. But overall, just if you were to keep him, I think 18 mil is definitely a little bit of an overpay. I would have thought maybe like more in that $9 to $15 million range. There was some interest in him in the market right away, but still, I didn't expect for the Jazz to kind of put out that much money. And the only good thing, like I said, is it's the second year is non-guaranteed, so they could kind of get rid of him or move him in a deal for a team like, say, like the Cavs wanted to get rid of some salary. They could trade for Derek Favors and then cut him, even though that wouldn't make much sense.
Yeah, like I would have gave him 12 million. I think. I don't know. It's just strange. No, like
Yeah, no, it's definitely a weird fit too, because you know that they're both not ideal offensively. There has been some talk about Favors working on his 3-point shot. Obviously, like we've heard that about almost every NBA player now, but we'll see what happens with that too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like having two guys who aren't. I mean, both those guys too, Gobert and Favors, they're not very quick of foot.
Yeah.
And we just saw them get picked apart, defensively when they're both on the floor. So it only works out, and this is shitty to say, if Gobert gets hurt again and you have Favors to play that small ball 5.
Yeah, it gives you in some insurance. But I think I would agree the contract amount is a little bit more. The only good thing is, like I said, the second year not being guaranteed kind of gives them like a get out of free jail card.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Anything else in terms of the signings you didn't like?
I do have one more I can pull out of my hat because I just thought of it. The Trevor Ariza. So I was thinking of the Rockets and I couldn't. Trevor Ariza signed the 1-year deal with $15 million. It's not a bad signing necessarily for the Suns, but I think it's a bad signing for Trevor Ariza himself. I don't know why you leave a winning situation to go to a team. And I get it; it's the pay. You're making $15 million. And even for the Suns, it's just so weird to bring in a vet like Ariza for 1 year to pay him. You have Josh Jackson, you have TJ Warren at the small forward position already. Why are you bringing in an old guy to take away minutes from the young guys when you're trying to rebuild? For both sides. I mean, I get for Ariza it was mainly about money, but to me, this was just such a strange move.
Yeah, it was not expected. I think for Ariza's point of view, he probably was like, all right, I'll sign this 1 year, 15 mil. I'm probably getting $5 million overpaid. That means next year when I take a contract, I could take a longer term contract with a good team. And I already caught my extra money. And then from the Phoenix side, yeah, like you definitely could have spent more time developing young talent. But I think in their minds, which I'm not saying I agree with, I think they're trying to prove to Devin Booker they want to be competitive now and win some more games. I don't know how many more games Ariza is going to help you win. But I think it does send a good message to Booker, but still only 1 year, 15 mil. It gives him cap flexibility for next year and then see what happens with Ariza. It was weird. It was definitely something I didn't expect. I thought he'd probably be back to Houston. We've talked about it before, especially the relationship with Chris Paul and Harden, being in that State Farm commercial together and whatnot. And then just to leave like that, I didn't expect it, especially quickly too. That was another signing that happened.
That's one of the first 5-10 signings, I feel like.
Yeah, it was just... Yeah, whatever. The Suns are trying to prove a point to Booker, see if it works out for them. I mean, it's somewhat of a big season, I think, for them moving forward. Obviously, they just locked Booker up long term, but he's not going to be happy if they keep losing and ending up in the lottery, which they probably will.
Yeah, I don't see that changing, at least not next year.
But talking about the best remaining free agents, we'll kind of just go through some guys who are still out there. Obviously, Clint Capella. He seems to be upset with the offers he's getting from Houston, and obviously the market hasn't helped him, and there's not really a ton of cap space out there. There's a chance, I think, that he signs his qualifying offer this year.
You think?
Yeah, I do.
Why?
I just think that he's not getting the money that he wants, so why not sign the qualifying offer? You're a young player. You're going to get – someone's going to throw you big money next year, and now Houston loses all leverage.
Do you think a guy wants – what do you think that does to, like, a player's relationship with the team when they're kind of forced to take the qualifying offer, when they're worth more? Do you think that has any impact on the relationship? I mean, just looking ahead, does that affect what happens next offseason? Like, does that leave a sour taste?
Somewhat of it does. I mean, unless Houston just comes out next offseason and offers him big money, which he thinks he deserves. But if you're Houston, you're taking a big chance. If I was them, I would just try to give him – I would try to find a middle ground, which I think is still possible, which I don't think is out of the realm of
Ryan Anderson.
You could try to do that, but it's like how many assets do they even really have to give up? I don't. It's like, do they want to pay him? I would personally would just pay him right now and just get it done with, and then you don't have to worry about it next offseason and just have your center of the future locked up. With Harden, with Paul, with Capella, you're going to be one of the best teams in the West. Obviously, you can fill in other guys at the other positions, but if you let them hit unrestricted free agency, someone's probably going to max them out, especially a bad team going to next offseason with a ton of money. So I wouldn't be surprised if I'm Capella, if you're like, yo, you guys don't want to give me the money I want, I'm going to sign a qualifying offer, and then next year you possibly could be screwed.
Yeah, I mean, I know he wants $100 million. Like, that's what Capella's looking for.
I think 4 years, like 80 million, like the Zach LaVine deal, I think would make more sense. Like,
Yeah,
especially he doesn't. I mean, he in a way he has leverage, but in a way he doesn't have leverage because no one's going to really offer a deal because they know that Houston's going to match, and just the market dried up so fast that he kind of lost most of his opportunities. Because I think Sacramento's starting to dry up in terms of cap space too.
it would be so ideal. This is just like a what if scenario if the Lakers could somehow get Deng's contract off and then sign Capella.
Yeah, I mean, but I think even if they did, I think Houston's going to match regardless too, and I think that's why teams didn't just throw, like a team like the Hawks, why they didn't just throw an offer sheet at Capella.
I mean, that's fine. If I'm a team and I can lock up that much money between Harden, Chris Paul, and Clint Capella and screw the Rockets' chance of getting anybody else for the next 3-4 years, I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're pretty screwed anyways, money wise. But I'm still kind of surprised that no one even tried to poke at Capella and be like, all right, we'll offer you that. But next year, if he does stay, sign the qualifying offer next year, he's going to come away with big money and he could definitely leave Houston, and then they'll be in a really bad place.
Yeah, and I think they're in trouble now, anyways. I can make a hot take right now. I think the chance of Houston winning a title was just last year.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Just because of DeMarcus Cousins going to Golden State, there's really no chance of anyone beating the Warriors unless there's some type of injury. And then obviously,
go ahead. Sorry.
And then obviously the next season, Chris Paul is going to be another year older, and the Warriors might be a little bit weaker, but then the Rockets will probably be weaker. A lot's going to depend on the Rockets. They have a couple young bigs. I know they got, I want to say DeAnthony Melton in the second round this year. A lot of people have been pretty high on him. If they can develop a couple pieces maybe this season for next year, it could help them, but it's not like they have much flexibility moving forward. Obviously, though, never sleep on Daryl Morey. He's been known to work some magic.
Yeah, and they lost. For me, it's just losing Abalamute and Trevor Ariza. Those two guys I thought was their key components, despite Abalamute being hurt and not playing well in the playoffs. Those two guys, I just really liked him on this team, and them both being gone, it's just this team didn't get better, I don't think.
Yeah, it's going to hurt them defensively. Obviously, James Ennis kind of fills in a little bit, but he's not the same player as those two guys. But moving to our next guy, D Wade, he's looks like he'll maybe be back with the Heat. He might not be back with the Heat. There's some chance about going to LA, and there's also been rumors floating around that some China team's going to offer him a mega offer. What do you think?
I was hoping you didn't know that because I wanted to throw that at you. I read that this morning that there's the Chinese, the Xing Zhang or whatever, the Dragons, they're looking to send him a huge max offer. He's got his shoe line over there too. I don't know. He could make a lot of money if he goes overseas. He
could really cash out.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did that. He's taking some pay cuts. Obviously, he got that big payday in Chicago. It's not like he can win a title in the NBA anymore. He's been over in China for a while now. I feel like, too, this summer, the last month or so, he's over there.
Yeah, I feel like he's always over there, too, with, like you mentioned, his shoe line, his clothing brand over there. Like, he has a pretty big fan base in Asia, so it would just only add to his money amount. And I saw someone bring this up on Twitter. It's like, do you want to get paid, like really paid, or back up Dion Waiters on the Heat or something?
Well, this is what I'm thinking, too. Their season ends before the NBA season, no?
Yeah, so he could come back to the NBA at the end.
Take a 1-year deal or something over there, or maybe I'm not sure how it works if he signs a multi-year deal, but maybe sign a 1-year deal, play out over there, and then you come back over to the Seas to a contender, in late March, early April, or whenever the signing is, late February, early March.
That's a real possibility too. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think that the China team probably wants to lock him up long term, but it'll be interesting to see if Wade can kind of negotiate that and get an NBA out.
Yeah, I'll take a 1-year deal, and and instead of giving me, $25 million for 4 years, or $25 million a year for 4 years, I'll take, $15 million for 1 year, something like that.
Yeah, and that'll be pretty big bucks for him. Moving on to another restricted free agent, Rodney Hood with the Cavs. There really hasn't been much chatter on him at all. What are your thoughts on Hood?
I think this is a guy who ends up in Cleveland no matter what happens. I know that they talked about they still have been talking. they're just trying to figure out, I think they're trying to move Kyle Korver to free up a little bit more money. But I know they had the qualifying offer out to him. I think he ends up back in Cleveland. There's just not a big market for him. And I think we mentioned it during the playoffs. When he sat out during that Raptors series and all that stuff came out, that hurt his value hugely, especially when he wasn't already playing well. So this was a guy I thought was a lock to get between 10 and 15 million this offseason. And he's going to get probably between the vet min and 5 million.
Yeah, I think he might end up getting a little bit more because the Cavs will just be like, all right, well, we want to keep you long term, kind of make that relationship better. And they can't afford to lose him because of the young talent. Being a restricted free agents really helped him in this case. So he'll most likely, like you said, end up back with the Cavs. Looking at some other veterans that are kind of could be, end of the bench, roster fillers, or maybe get some solid minutes here and there. You look at David West. He did look a little bit washed at points last year during the playoffs, but still a solid backup to have, a leadership role too as well. What are your thoughts on West and where he could land?
I don't know. Are we sure there's no chance of him going back to the Warriors? They would have already re-signed him.
I think they're close to their roster being full, but there probably is a small chance. There also, I think, is a small chance at retirement.
Interesting. There's just not a lot of guys that. Like you said, last year was the first time you saw him kind of take a major step back in his reduced role. He's a little bit slower. If he wanted to come back on the vet min to the Pacers, I'd love to have him. David West is a great locker room guy.
Yeah, I was really jealous. He was between the Pacers and Nets when he ended up going to Indiana, and I really wanted him to go with the Nets because I thought he'd be such like a good compliment to Brook Lopez. And then obviously it worked out pretty well in Indiana, though.
Yeah, he was a fan favorite. So I think whatever team gets him, he'll be a great locker room guy. But I definitely think this is a guy we're not going to see play very many minutes anymore, especially for a team that's good.
He's more of a veteran leadership type role at the end of the
if somebody
bench.
goes down, I can step up.
Yeah. Another big man. He's not as old as David West. He's starting to get up there in age, I guess, a little bit. But Trevor Booker, high energy, big. Probably best as a small ball 5 than instead of a power forward. But where do you think he'll end up? There's been some talk about possibly landing in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's the last rumor I heard yesterday. Actually, was him possibly going to the Cavaliers. That's not a bad move for the Cavs. They're going to try and remain somewhat relevant. I liked Booker in his time with the Nets, and then I actually really liked him as the Pacers last year. He's a high energy guy. He's not dirty, but he does the dirty things. He's okay with battling for boards and everything else.
I saw him win a game for the Nets once because he literally got like 5 offensive rebounds in the last 2 minutes of a game.
There you go. That's what the kind of guy Trevor Booker is right there. 5 offensive rebounds in crunch time. So I think wherever he goes, he will play solid minutes. And I think any team that gets him is going to get a good guy. I like Trevor Booker a lot. Again, that's another guy who I think is really good in locker rooms. Yeah,
high character guy. He just seems like a good dude off the court as well. If he doesn't sign with the Cavs, maybe even with a rebuilding situation, maybe he wants to win, but a team might offer him a little bit more money or more minutes in a team where they kind of just need a solid veteran to have around. All right, moving on to another solid veteran. Nothing too crazy, but a guy who could definitely fill in a bench role. Devin Harris, veteran point guard. It looks like there's some rumors about Dallas. Thoughts on him?
He's still solid, getting up there in age. He's just a good guy. He's a solid player. He's really good at playmaking still.
I met him once, actually.
What?
I met him once, actually.
That's right. That's one of the few NBA elites you've met.
Yep. Got his autograph. Actually got 2. So shout out to Devin Harris for being a nice guy.
Preach. He played the Nuggets last year, was solid. Going back to the Mavs would be interesting. The Mavs love to keep their the same guys. They brought JJ Barea left, they brought him back. Wouldn't be shocked that if Devin Harris goes back, especially because they just missed out on Yogi Ferrell. Yogi Ferrell backed out of his deal and went to the Kings.
Called DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah, right. Dallas has no luck with guys, right? At least this guy wasn't a huge signing. Devin Harris is just going to have to find that kind of backup role for him to be more of a mentor now. I don't think he's going to get a lot of minutes. He's just not that kind of player anymore in his career. But he's definitely a guy who can help a locker room. He can fit in for some spot minutes. He'll be someone, I think, a team that's either looking to have someone coach, or not coach, but be a voice to some young guys, or maybe a contending team takes the flyer and has him back up, a veteran point guard.
Yeah, not a bad as a third point guard or like a leadership role for some young dudes. But Kory, you ready to hit him with your new segment?
Yes, sir. This is now my second segment ever created for the NBA outlet. It's overhyped or underhyped. Basically, I'm going to name, give you a player at a time. We'll say is he underhyped or overhyped, and we'll go from there. First up on this list is a guy who just re-signed with the Boston Celtics for 4 years, Marcus Smart. Is he overhyped or underhyped?
This is a really tough one to start off the segment. I'm going to say underhyped just because the general NBA fan still thinks that he's not good, or they look at the shooting numbers. You see too many times like, oh, Marcus Smart shot 3 of 8 from the field and he had, 8 points and 1 assist and 4 rebounds. But then meanwhile, he had like 5 hustle stats where he got like 3 deflections, got some loose balls, really annoyed the shit out of James Harden at the end of a game, forced 2 offensive fouls. Boston gets the win. You can't really kind of put that shit into, statistics. So I think Smart's definitely kind of still underhyped. I think a lot of like the hustle and energy dudes are still underhyped because general fans look at the numbers and they're like, oh, well, he's not averaging 15, 5, and 5. He can't be that good.
Yeah, I think I'd side on the underhyped too. I feel like too many times I see people like tweeting out his offensive numbers, and it's like, bro, we've been over this. This is a defensive guy who impacts the game on so many other levels.
Agreed.
Next up, near and dear to your heart, D'Angelo Russell. Overhyped or underhyped?
I feel like D'Angelo is actually underhyped. I feel like I've never seen such a young player have so much hate. Like so many people just like really dislike him. Like I'll see Laker fans occasionally in my mentions, like I'll post during the season a clip of D'Angelo doing something and they'll talk about how they're still happy about the trade. Like, oh yeah, we're happy we let go of D'Angelo, even though he's a young talent. And I've said this on the Buzz. I think I've said this on the outlet before. I'm expecting at least a fringe all-star season from D'Angelo. I think he'll be in that contention. He just has a lot of basketball talent, and he's a really young guy, and he still needs to develop mentally. As soon as he understands that, and the dude has been him and Devin Booker are really good friends, and they've been putting in major work. It's like every single day you see them doing some type of workout, and I've been really impressed with his work ethic, and I'm expecting a big year. So underhyped for me.
I think underhyped as well. I think he's shown some glimpses of being big time. And Laker fans in your mentions, they're fools because Laker fans, I don't think got to see what D'Angelo Russell really could be because he had to share a spotlight with Kobe, and the next year he was kind of banged up. And obviously, even in his first year with the Nets, he was kind of banged up. If he stays healthy, I agree with you. I think he's going to be a fringe all-star. We've seen some big offensive games from him already with the Nets. He had a couple, big 3-point outings. He's a guy that you surely need to keep your eye on, especially when the Nets are, as we kind of know, they're gaining a lot of traction on the NBA Twitter and around the league as a team that's up and coming.
And I'll say another thing about D'Angelo, his passing is severely underrated. He is an elite passer. He's made some passes that I've been just mind blown where his bounce pass game is really nice too. And I think people just think of him as like a scorer, flashy dribbles and stuff like that. But nah, I think Kenny got him more into the role of like, dude, you're a point guard, you're a lead guard, you're going to set the tone for this offense. I could rant on this all day, but we'll move on to the next guy.
Now, these ones, the last 3 are going to get a little dicey. And it starts off with this one. Karl-Anthony Towns, overhyped or underhyped?
This is probably one of the hardest ones. This depends on who you ask. Man, it's really tough. I guess.
Here, I'll let you go. Hey, I'll go first because this one I know my answer already. Overhyped. I think Karl-Anthony Towns is overhyped. I think he's got the ability to be really good. I think the offensive numbers are there. But defensively, he looks lost and confused. He could have been in Dazed and Confused as a secret celebrity cast guest. He's offensively, even in the playoffs, he looked non-existent. I think he's got a lot of holes in his game, and I don't necessarily see the star that everybody claims he is already. I think he's got a long way to go, so I think he's slightly overhyped right now.
I think I'll agree with the overhyped fact that people have him. Some people have mentioned him as the best center in the league, or like
top. I him as top 3. I'm like, no,
top 3 best center in the league. Like I think he can definitely get there. He has the tools to be the best center in the league. Like there's no question. There's a lot of athletic ability, a lot of talent, a lot of skill. But right now, I think he's a little bit lower than what people think he really is at. And like you said, defensively, he has not been good. And obviously, Jimmy Butler questioning his work ethic doesn't really help him as well. And I think that whole relationship and that whole scheme in Minnesota just isn't really working out. So I think Towns will get to that level of being a top 3 center. But I think right now people need to take it back just a touch on him just because of the defensive liability. Like offensively, he's amazing. He can score inside, he can score outside. He improved as a 3-point shooter. He had some really nice splits last year, but I think he's slightly overhyped.
All right, next up, this player was just traded and dealt. We already talked about this trade in depth, obviously. DeMar DeRozan. I've heard a lot of things since him being traded. Is he overhyped or underhyped?
I thought you were going to go with Kawhi here, and I was really ready to rant and say how underhyped Kawhi is, but it took me for a 12 when you said DeRozan. I think DeRozan's a little bit underhyped because people are treating him like he's not an all-star, that he's like a terrible contract and this bad player that can't really do anything. Yeah, he's not good in the postseason, but obviously a lot of the Raptors haven't been good in the postseason. I think going to San Antonio will help him and kind of expand his game a little bit. And one thing I'll say about DeRozan too is it seems like every year he's adding a little bit to his game. Last year he worked on that 3-point shot. It kind of fell off a little bit in the playoffs, but he can kind of do that again. He worked as a playmaker last year. Maybe this year he takes a step as a defensive player and more consistent. So I think DeRozan's a little bit underhyped. You would think that the Spurs just traded for somebody who's like a fringe starter with the way that people talk about him.
Yeah, that was my point too. I think he's definitely underrated, underhyped, whatever. I don't know. I forgot what I named this segment. But he's definitely under whatever. I saw a lot of people after the trade happened. Obviously a lot of people were saying it was a good trade for the Spurs. Then I saw a lot of people just, I don't know, maybe because West Coast people don't watch a lot of East Coast games. But people were really hard on DeRozan. Obviously, the defense you're losing from Kawhi to DeRozan, it's going to be noticeable. DeRozan is not the defender that Kawhi is. But offensively, he's still very good. I mean, his footwork is among the best. I mean, I read this actually recently. He studies a lot of Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan film.
I've seen a lot of like comparison films with them like back to back, when they have the videos on like split screen and you can see the footwork. It's almost identical in some situations.
Yeah. And so that's something that like sticks out. Footwork is huge in the NBA. It's one of the things that I feel like goes
under the radar
a lot. Yeah.
Underhyped.
Yeah, definitely. It's an underhyped thing in the NBA, footwork. So I think DeRozan is slightly underhyped and maybe playing, for the Spurs team, which as we know kind of flies under the radar. He can stay underhyped, but I think he's going to have a really good year for them.
Yeah, I think I would understand the complaints about the contract, but I think DeRozan as a player is underhyped. Like, I just don't know why people hate him so much. Like, he's a really good ISO scorer. Obviously, that's not where the NBA's at, and I'm sure he can adjust.
Now, last one. This is an interesting one, and I know my side of it already. Andre Drummond, overhyped or underhyped?
This is a weird one because I don't watch a ton of the Pistons, but I see too many people like think Andre Drummond is like a top 5. Like, I think in some degrees he is underhyped and in other degrees he's overhyped because like he had a really nice season last year, but people were talking about him a top 5 center, but I don't really think he's that. He doesn't do anything other than like he rebounds. He's improved his defense last year and inside he can finish, but he can't really do much other than that. So I'm going to say he's slightly overhyped.
I'm there with you. Slightly overhyped.
He had a good season. Sorry, Kory, to cut you off. He had a good season last year, but the season before that, he wasn't good. And there was question about like, is this dude even trying? What's his work ethic like? Like that inconsistency in that area is kind of scary, especially for a player who's been in the league and starting for a while now.
Yeah, to me, he's just like a young Dwight Howard, honestly.
But not as good defensively.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Like he rebounds, he's a double machine. But offensively, too, his game is so limited. I know I've seen videos of him shooting threes, and what big man is not shooting threes in training, and practicing and whatever. But yeah, I just, the work ethic has been questioned, and he just, he can't shoot free throws.
I've seen him benched way too many times in a Pistons uniform. Maybe not as much last year, but the year before. I remember actually being at a game. It was Nets versus Pistons, and they literally benched Drummond. And they played Aaron Baines instead because Drummond wasn't doing the small things.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff to me that's why he's overhyped. Because I see a lot of people, like you said, a lot of people claim that he's top 5 center in the league, and he's possibly top 3. It's one of those things that always leaves me scratching my head.
I think maybe 10 years ago in that way the NBA was like, everything wasn't as much about shooting. Inside presence was a big deal. Having big bodies mattered. He had more value. But right now, I think he's just a little bit overhyped. He's not like really my cup of tea at center position.
Yeah. I have one. I have one more. I didn't have another one, but I guess I'm just gonna pick on centers. Nikolai Jokic.
Nikola Jokic.
Jokic.
I think that he's underhyped. I think that too many people are like, oh, well, he like, you look at him, he doesn't look like a super athlete. He doesn't look necessarily like a basketball player, but his basketball IQ is like through the roof. Defensively, obviously, he still needs work, but people treat him like that he's not, at least a top 5 center or borderline top 5. They treat him like he should be out of the top 10. So I think he's underhyped. I like what he brings. I think as a playmaker at the center position, there's not really many guys better than him.
Underhyped. 100% agree with you. He didn't do everything. He can shoot. He can score. He can score down low. He's got some decent post moves. His passing ability may be the best among centers, arguably. Yeah. He can rebound. He can still block shots and play some defense. I think he's really underrated.
He can get really hot from 3. I've seen him knock down like a couple in a row, and I'm just like, God damn.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, I know Joel Embiid is, he's fantastic, and if he's healthy, he's probably going to be the best center in the league. But, I think Jokic is right there with him. I really don't think there's that huge of a gap. The only difference to me is the fact that Embiid is more of the primary offensive scoring option on the Sixers than Jokic is on the Nuggets.
Yeah, I think for Jokic, it's going to be his body, his conditioning, being a better defender where he can kind of get gassed by people, just dusted because he doesn't have the foot quickness. So I think getting a better understanding, maybe studying a lot of Marc Gasol, I think defensively is what's holding him back. But offensively, he's got the full package.
For sure. I think what we'll do going forward on the next show, we'll do overhyped or underhyped by position because there was a lot of centers just now.
Yeah, there was. And I already have a couple in mind that we'll definitely think about using for the next one. But Kory, great work on the first overhyped and underhyped segment. As always, thank everybody for listening. You can check us out on iTunes, Block Talk Radio, OGBasketball.com, Google Play, and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, retweet, find us on Twitter at OGBasketball. Let us know what you think. Love it, hate it, whatever.
Do it. Peace out, Knuckle.